Trump versus Harris, contrasting visions for America's future. As the 2024 U.S. presidential election approaches, the nation finds itself at a crossroads. On one side is Donald Trump, former president who seeks to return to the Oval Office with a promise to restore the policies that defined his first term. On the other is Kamala Harris, the current vice president, who aspires to lead the country with a vision that builds on progress while addressing the evolving needs of the American people. Their differing backgrounds, political ideologies, and approaches to governance offer voters a stark choice for the future of the United States. Backgrounds of the candidates. Donald Trump. Donald Trump's rise to political prominence is a story of transformation from a business mogul to a populist leader. Born into a wealthy family in Queens, New York, Trump built his reputation in the world of real estate, branding himself as a master dealmaker. His celebrity status was further solidified through his role as the host of The Apprentice, a reality television show that showcased his image as a decisive and no-nonsense leader. In 2016, Trump shocked the political establishment by winning the presidency as an outsider candidate who promised to drain the swamp in Washington. His tenure as president was marked by bold and often polarizing decisions. He implemented sweeping tax cuts, pursued an America First foreign policy, and appointed conservative judges to the federal courts. However, his administration was also plagued by controversies, including his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, impeachment trials, and contentious immigration policy. Now, as he campaigns for a second term, Trump presents himself as the candidate who can make America great again once more. His platform is largely a continuation of his previous policies, emphasizing economic nationalism, deregulation, and a strong stance on immigration. Kamala Harris's journey to the national stage is one of breaking barriers and advocating for justice. Born in Oakland, California to immigrant parents, a Jamaican father and an Indian mother, Harris's upbringing was deeply influenced by the civil rights movement. Her career in law led her to become the first Black woman to serve as Attorney General of California, where she earned reputation as a tough prosecutor with a focus on criminal justice reform. In 2017, Harris was elected to the U.S. Senate, where she quickly gained attention for her sharp questioning during committee hearings and her advocacy on issues such as health care, immigration, and women's rights. Her selection as Joe Biden's running mate in 2020 made history. And as vice president, Harris has been a key player in the administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, efforts to expand voting rights, and initiatives to combat climate change. As a presidential candidate, Harris envisions an America that is more inclusive, equitable, and forward-thinking. Her platform prioritizes social justice, economic fairness, and environmental sustainability, reflecting her belief in government as a force for good. Economic policy. Trump's economic vision. Donald Trump's economic philosophy is rooted in principles of free market capitalism, tax cuts, and deregulation. During his presidency, Trump signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act into law, which significantly reduced the corporate tax rate and provided temporary tax relief for individuals. His administration touted these tax cuts as a catalyst for economic growth, arguing that they would spur investment, job creation, and higher wages. Trump's approach to trade was characterized by a protectionist stance, exemplified by his imposition of tariffs on China and renegotiation of trade agreements like NAFTA, which was replaced by the USMCA. He believed that these measures were necessary to protect American industries and reduce the trade deficit. Additionally, Trump prioritized energy independence, rolling back environmental regulations to boost domestic oil and gas production. Looking ahead, Trump's economic platform for 2024 focuses on further tax cuts, reducing government spending, and continuing his tough stance on trade with China. He argues that these policies are essential for maintaining American prosperity and ensuring that the U.S. remains competitive on the global stage. Harris's economic vision. Kamala Harris's economic agenda is centered on addressing income inequality and expanding opportunities for middle and working-class Americans. She advocates for a progressive tax system that ensures the wealthiest individuals and corporations pay their fair share. Her proposals include reversing the Trump-era tax cuts for the wealthy, raising the minimum wage, and providing tax credits to low- and middle-income families. Harris places a strong emphasis on job creation, particularly in the green economy, She supports significant investments in infrastructure, clean energy, and education, to prepare the workforce for the jobs of the future. Harris believes that transitioning to a sustainable economy is not only necessary for addressing climate change, but also for creating millions of high-quality jobs. In contrast to Trump's protectionist trade policies, Harris advocates for fair trade agreements that protect American workers, while promoting human rights and environmental standards globally. Her economic vision is one of inclusive growth, where prosperity is shared across all segments of society. Social issues. Donald Trump's stance on social issues is closely tied to his conservative base. On immigration, Trump made headlines with his hardline policies, including the construction of a border wall with Mexico, travel ban on several Muslim-majority countries, and the zero-tolerance policy that led to family separations at the border. Trump argues that these measures are necessary to secure the nation and protect American jobs. In healthcare, Trump consistently sought to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, ACA, commonly known as Obamacare. Although he was unable to fully repeal it, his administration did, however, eliminate the individual mandate, which required Americans to have health insurance or face a penalty. Trump advocates for a healthcare system that is more market-driven, with fewer government mandates. On civil rights, Trump's record is mixed. While he signed the First Step Act, a bipartisan criminal justice reform bill, his rhetoric and policies on race relations, police conduct, and protests have often been divisive. Trump portrays himself as a defender of law and order, criticizing movements like Black Lives Matter and opposing efforts to defund the police. Harris's approach. Kamala Harris's approach to social issues is shaped by her background as a prosecutor and her advocacy for civil rights. On immigration, Harris supports comprehensive reform that provides a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, protects DACA recipients, and strengthens the asylum process. She criticizes Trump's policies as inhumane and counterproductive, arguing for a more compassionate and practical approach. In healthcare, Harris is a staunch defender of the ACA and supports expanding it to provide universal coverage. She has also expressed support for a Medicare for All system, though she has been flexible in her approach, emphasizing the importance of achieving universal coverage in a way that is feasible and sustainable. Harris's stance on civil rights and criminal justice reform is central to her campaign. She advocates for police reform, including banning chokeholds and establishing national standards for the use of force. Harris also supports measures to address systemic racism in housing, education, and the criminal justice system. Her vision is one of a more just and equitable society. Everyone has the opportunity to succeed. Foreign policy. Trump's foreign policy. Donald Trump's foreign policy is best described by his America First doctrine. Throughout his presidency, Trump prioritized U.S. interests, often at the expense of traditional alliances and multilateral agreements. He withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement, the Iran nuclear deal, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, arguing that these agreements were unfair to American workers and undermined U.S. sovereignty. Trump's approach to foreign relations was characterized by a willingness to challenge long-standing norms. He sought to renegotiate trade deals, imposed tariffs on allies and adversaries alike, and demanded that NATO allies increase their defense spending. Trump's meetings with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and his attempts to broker peace in the Middle East were among his most high-profile diplomatic efforts. In 2024, Trump's foreign policy platform continues to emphasize national sovereignty, economic nationalism, and a strong military. He advocates for a foreign policy that prioritizes American security and economic interests, even if it means stepping back from global leadership roles. Harris's foreign policy. Kamala Harris's foreign policy approach contrasts sharply with Trump's. Harris advocates for a return to multilateralism and the restoration of America's leadership on the global stage. She supports rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement and working with international partners to address global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation. Harris emphasizes the importance of rebuilding alliances, particularly with NATO and other democratic nations. She argues that America's strength lies in its ability to work with allies, promote shared values, and address common threats. Harris is also committed to human rights and democracy promotion, advocating for policies that support these principles globally. On trade, Harris supports agreements that are fair, enforce labor and environmental standards, and protect American workers. Her foreign policy vision is one that balances national security with global cooperation, ensuring that the U.S. leads by example on the world stage. Climate and environmental policies. Trump's environmental stance. Donald Trump's environmental policies have been defined by a focus on deregulation and energy independence. His administration rolled back numerous environmental regulations, arguing that they were burdensome to businesses and hindered economic growth. Trump prioritized the development of fossil fuels, including coal, oil, and natural gas, as key components of America's energy strategy. Trump's decision to withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement was one of his most controversial environmental moves. He argued that the agreement was unfair to the U.S. and would harm the economy. Trump's vision for the future includes continued support for the fossil fuel industry and opposition to what he sees as overreach by environmental regulators. Harris's environmental stance. Kamala Harris's environmental policies are rooted in the belief that climate change is an existential threat that requires immediate and comprehensive action. She is a strong advocate for transitioning to renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar, and supports rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement as a starting point for global climate leadership. Harris supports the Green New Deal, a set of proposals aimed at addressing climate change while creating jobs and reducing economic inequality. She believes that environmental justice is essential, particularly for communities that have been disproportionately affected by pollution and environmental degradation. Harris's vision for America's environmental future includes significant investments in clean energy infrastructure, incentives for green technologies, and strict regulations to reduce carbon emissions. She views the fight against climate change as an opportunity to build a more sustainable and equitable economy. Healthcare and pandemic response. Trump's healthcare policies. Healthcare was a major battleground during Trump's presidency, particularly his efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Although the full repeal was unsuccessful, Trump's administration took steps to undermine the ACA, including eliminating the individual mandate and supporting legal challenges to its constitutionality. Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic has been widely debated. His administration's response included Operation Warp Speed, which facilitated the rapid development and distribution of vaccines. However, Trump faced criticism for downplaying the severity of the virus, inconsistent messaging, and lack of a coordinated federal response. Looking forward, Trump's healthcare platform focuses on reducing healthcare costs through competition, expanding health savings accounts, and protecting patients with pre-existing conditions, though details on how these goals would be achieved remain vague. Harris's healthcare policies. Kamala Harris has made healthcare a cornerstone of her platform, advocating for the expansion of the ACA and the eventual establishment of a Medicare for All system. She supports policies that would lower prescription drug prices, expand access to mental health services, and address health disparities among underserved communities. Harris has also been a vocal critic of the Trump administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, emphasizing the need for a coordinated federal response, increased funding for public health agencies, and better support for frontline healthcare workers. Her vision for healthcare is one where every American has access to affordable, high-quality care, regardless of income or employment status. Harris believes that healthcare is a human right and that the government has a responsibility to ensure that all citizens are covered. Criminal justice and civil rights. Trump's record on criminal justice. Donald Trump's approach to criminal justice has been shaped by a law and order philosophy. His administration emphasized tough-on-crime policies, including increased penalties for drug offenses and a strong stance against violent crime. Trump frequently criticized efforts to reform police practices, viewing them as undermining law enforcement. However, Trump did sign the First Step Act into law, a bipartisan criminal justice reform bill that aimed to reduce recidivism and ease sentencing for nonviolent offenders. Despite this, his overall rhetoric and policies often clashed with the goals of criminal justice reform advocates, particularly in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement and nationwide protests against police brutality. Harris's record on criminal justice. Kamala Harris's record on criminal justice is complex, reflecting her experience as both a prosecutor and a reform advocate. As California's Attorney General, Harris implemented programs aimed at reducing recidivism and providing alternatives to incarceration. However, she has also faced criticism from progressives for her stance on certain issues, such as her opposition to statewide measures to decriminalize certain offenses. As a senator, Harris has been a strong advocate for criminal justice reform, co-sponsoring legislation to end cash bail, abolish private prisons, and reform police practices. She supports comprehensive police reform that includes greater accountability, transparency, and community engagement. Harris's vision for criminal justice is one that balances public safety with fairness and equity. She believes in addressing the root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of opportunity, and in ensuring that the justice system is fair to all Americans, regardless of race or background. Conclusion: the 2024 presidential election presents voters with a clear choice between two contrasting visions for America's future. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris offer divergent approaches to economic policy, social issues, foreign relations, environmental sustainability, healthcare, and criminal justice. Trump's vision is one of nationalism, deregulation, and a return to the policies that defined his first term, while Harris advocates for a more inclusive, equitable, and progressive America. As the nation moves closer to Election Day, the decision that voters make will shape the direction of the country for years to come. Will America choose to return to Trump's brand of leadership, or will it embrace Harris's vision of progress and justice? The stakes are high, and the outcome will have profound implications for the future of the United States. Thank you for taking the time to explore this comparison between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. If you found this article insightful, please consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth analysis and discussions on the 2024 election and beyond. We appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you again in future articles and videos. Thank you, and see you again.